Hi, it's Kevin Markman. Welcome to Relationship Ready. We appreciate you coming back, and we really appreciate your support. It's like we're building this relationship together. This relationship where I talk, maybe you listen, maybe you support. We communicate. You feel like you get to know me. I get to attempt to support you. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about our relationships, ours, our significant others, our friends, and especially today we're talking about defining relationships. So how would you define our relationship? Let's define our relationships in all areas. Is it important? Well, that's where we need to delve in to figure out a little bit more about ourselves. Because relationships go on a continuum. Because defining relationships comes with a stronger sense of security. With that security comes structure. And structure creates that security. So if we define a relationship as we are a couple, there's some security in that. But it also, relationships, come with spontaneity. And spontaneity comes without a lot of structure. You don't know what's going to happen. It's just going to be random. And we need spontaneity in relationships too. So we're going to talk about defining our relationships, whether it's important, and what our relationships are, and whether it's important to define them for ourselves and for those who we're in it with. Because we all need a certain amount of structure, and we all need a certain amount of spontaneity. Because what's important in this, and what we're going to learn about, is how to build up your confidence so that you can be clear on what your relationship is and whether or not you want to define it. We're going to define it for ourselves first, because sometimes we only need to define it for us. And then we can participate and feel better about where we stand. And sometimes we need to make the decisions to define the relationship for both of us. And maybe it's great if at least there's an understanding or maybe an agreement on how the definition of the relationship is playing out. Because there's lots of definitions out there. There's couples, there's committed, there's thruples, there's open. And there's an entire continuum of what relationships are. You might be swinging, or you might be completely married, committed, and not even okay to look at other people or fantasize about other people. Or you might be basing your relationship on being open and fantasizing about other people and experiencing other people. Each of those ends and ever in between, as you know, comes with struggle. So today, what are we hoping to get out of this? Well, if you get nothing else out of this, I'm hoping you get the security comes from structure. The ultimate structure is faith. I'm not talking about religion, I'm talking about faith. It's feeling better. It decreases anxiety if we have faith in something. Maybe it's faith in your relationship. Maybe it's faith in nature. Maybe it's faith in God. Maybe it's faith in the universe. Maybe it's faith that this relationship is going to end someday. Or maybe it's that this one's going to continue. But in that moment, that faith is what creates security. So, look into yourself and see whether you have faith in your relationships. There's probably one you have faith in at least within that inner circle. Hopefully there's more, and you can build more. Those are the decisions that we're going to make out of this. The other major thing I hope you learn out of this, if you don't know already, because I think you know it already, internally, if you've never said it out loud, is spontaneity is creativity. In order to make relationships work, we need creativity, we need spontaneity. No matter how you're defining your relationship. Because if you don't have any spontaneity and creativity, it's dull, it's repetitive, it never moves anywhere, and you feel stuck. And we cannot be stagnant. We're always moving, either forward or backward in our relationships. So how do we get to decide which way we move? Well, that's using some spontaneity and some creativity. Within the structure that you create, within whatever you define as a relationship. If you define your relationship as a couple, and you say, all right, we're a couple. We're committed or we're not committed. We are building trust or we're maintaining what we have. Making those definitions is what creates the structure. Changing those definitions or going deeper into yourselves and each other is spontaneity and creativity. Maybe you go somewhere you've never been before. Maybe you try something within your relationship or outside your relationship. The challenge that we need to be able to prepare for ahead of time before we make those decisions is knowing ourselves well enough to make decisions about defining your relationship with yourself first. Is this something I'm comfortable with? Is this something that's just outside my comfort zone? Is this something that I'm completely uncomfortable with? Is this something that hits my values? Is this something that is against my values of what I stand for? Because if we can define our relationship to ourselves first, it makes it so much easier to define our relationship with others. Because then, if your values don't fit, if your timing doesn't fit, if your feelings don't fit about yourself, they're not going to fit with other people either. At least not unless you can communicate about what your definition of yourself is and what your definition in relationship to yourself is. Are you a committed person for yourself and for others? Are you a spontaneous person? Are you a loving person? Are you a supportive person? Are you a caring person? If you can't define yourself as whatever qualities you have, then you're not going to be able to be that for someone else either. But if you can define yourself and those people are acceptable to it, maybe you're a sarcastic person. Maybe you're a mean person. Maybe you're a defensive person. Maybe it depends on your mood. And if you're in this mood, you're happy, you're jovial, you're not defensive, you're supportive. But if you're in a depressed mood, maybe you're closed off, you're defensive, and you're snarky. But defining yourself and knowing yourself and your relationship to yourself is what helps you know your relationship. And then decide what you want. So when you have those conversations to say, let's define our relationship, that doesn't mean it's a telltale sign for sabotaging or ending a relationship. What it means is it's an opportunity for spontaneity and creativity. And for structure, to decide this is where we stand and this is where we want to go. Where we stand is the structure, where we want to go is the spontaneity. So take this in, figure out what feels right to you, because what feels right to you is your definition of your relationship to yourself. And then we need to either have, develop, or work together with friends, family, partners, therapists to communicate well enough about how do you express verbally, visually, through art, through music, through dance, defining who you are in partnership to somebody else. You ever had that dance with somebody where you're like in the same vibe? Now, wouldn't that be nice if you could do that in your communication, in your parenting, in your talks where you have to talk about your relationship? These are the tools to be able to develop, to be able to have language, to talk about structure, to talk about spontaneity, and to talk about defining your relationship to yourself and defining your relationship to your partner, to your lover, to your friend, to your mentor, to your children. Those are the things that help define our relationships. It's a complicated process, but the simplest part of it is look for the structure that you need and look for the spontaneity that you need. So, How would you define your relationship to yourself? Maybe think about it, maybe journal about it, process through, talk about it with your closest people. Are you a committed person? Are you an open person? How much structure do you need to manage your emotions? How much spontaneity do you need to create and love and enjoy the world? Then you can look at what your relationship is to others. So what is your relationship to others? Are you more defensive? Are you more open? Are you a good communicator? Do you want to talk? Do you pursue? Do you retreat? Then you can define that with the people closest to you when you have that talk about defining your relationship. So consider all that, and consider it's an ongoing process because it changes over time. Crisis changes things. Each person growing in different ways changes things. It's possible to grow in different ways and together if you have your core foundations and your definition of your relationship clear for yourself and for whoever you're in a relationship with. Because then you can grow off of that like a foundation. And that's what we're looking for each of us to communicate, be honest with yourself, be honest with each other, and become more relationship ready. Thank you very much. Appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time on Relationship Ready.